Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Andrew Seaman, LinkedIn's managing editor for jobs and career development. I'm so happy to have you here as always, and I want to start off by asking you to introduce yourselves in the comments, as I always do. And in fact, we have so many people already joining us. We have Bernardo from Uruguay, Jeffrey from Florida. I was just there. It was so wonderful. A little bit humid, but wonderful. Miranda from New York, where I am. We have James from Malaysia, Dinah from Syracuse, and Brandy from Georgia. Welcome to all of you. Keep introducing yourselves in the comments, but don't just tell us your name and where you're from. Tell us a little bit about your job search, your career. Maybe if you're looking for a new job in a new field, maybe you want to get a promotion where you already are. Tell us what you're hoping for, because we love to see people sort of express what they want and also that people can connect with them. So maybe you see someone who's in the industry that you want to move into. Maybe they're already in your field and you could work together on resumes or on promotion strategies, something like that. Because really, some of the best messages I get after these shows are from people who say, hey, listen, I started working with this person that I met in the comments, or we have a job search club going. And sometimes they meet via Zoom or something like that. And it's really a great way to build bridges and connections, because networking is the cornerstone of a successful job search and career. And there's no better time to start than right now. So keep getting those introductions going. And we have such an amazing show for you today. We're talking all about personal branding. And I know a lot of times people think personal branding isn't for them, but you have a brand whether you like it or not. So today we have someone who has really owned their brand and has created so much success around it and around their career. So welcome, Deja Riley, Isadore Check. So welcome to you. You are a fitness expert, a host, a philanthropist. You wear so many hats. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm so excited to be here with all of you beautiful, amazing people. Thank you for showing up and being prepared to listen to this conversation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And people out there, they may recognize you from screens already. You are a fitness expert. You're on Mirror, you're on YouTube, you're everywhere. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
Absolutely, Andrew. But before we start to do that, I just want to set the tone. I was listening to a little bit of music before we came in here, and I don't know what all of you have done with your day so far. So let's start out with just giving ourselves a little beat. Can everybody just clap where they are? Sit up straight in your chair. Just get a little clap going. There we go. Andrew's got it. Little clap. There we go. Now let's find a little head bop with that clap. Or maybe you're snapping your fingers. Maybe start to shimmy your shoulders a little bit, get a little movement going, maybe a little chest pop. I love a chest pop. And then place both hands on your heart and just take a moment to recenter yourself. Close your eyes, take some deep breaths. I was really nervous before I stepped in this space, and sometimes breath work just grounds me. So I just place both hands on my heart, and I'm easily reminded that my heart is still beating. That means I can keep going. I can keep moving forward in my life, and so can you. I'm Deja Riley. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and welcome any questions that you might have for me. But first and foremost, just want you to put a big smile on your face. Let's cultivate some joy in this space, and let's just get to know one another. I want to have a comfortable conversation with all of you and stay connected hereafter. So I was born in New York, which is where I live now, raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I, have always had a very active lifestyle. If you ask anybody, I have been moving my body to the beat of music and to the beat of my own drum since I was very little. I was classically trained in ballet, jazz, tap, lyrical, flamenco, hip hop at a studio in Virginia Beach that is well known, Denise Walls Dance Energy, the home of so many greats that went on to choreograph beyond So You Think You Can Dance, dance with various celebrities, dance all around the world, enter into various companies, and I am one of those people. I moved to LA around the age of 19, where I went to explore and dive into a professional career in dance. Through a decade, I had the pleasure of working with incredible choreographers, other incredible dancers, artists, directors, producers, and some celebrities that you might recognize, like Beyonce, Britney Spears, J-Lo, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, and the list goes on and on. From that decade-long dance career, I wanted to move into something that would still feed my physical impulses, keep me moving, still keep me connected to music, which is a constant thread through my life. And so I transitioned into the fitness industry, where I now can call myself a fitness professional, a wellness expert, and a philanthropist. And so that's just a little tiny bit about my journey. And we'll dive deeper into that as we surf through this conversation.
Great. Yeah, no, and I think you got a lot of people going. I see Anthony says that Deja, we're gonna have to exchange playlists. So you have a lot of people in there. But yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And we have so many people saying hello. We have Edith from California, Caddy from Texas, Connie from Kentucky, Melissa from Massachusetts. We have John from Montreal, Sweta from Canada, our good friend. We have Diana from Florida and Leslie from Chicago, and so many more. So I think you really started them off with a great way and to start their day, depending on where they are in the world.
Amazing.
And you know, one of the reasons that I want to talk to you about personal branding is that you have such a recognizable brand. If you're on Instagram, people know you online. How did you start building it? Because like you said, you went from sort of the world of dance, and which is obviously fitness adjacent, if not very much in fitness. But
Yes.
then you sort of transitioned to become really a fitness expert. So how did you sort of own that and build that brand?
Absolutely. Well, in summary, a lot of people would have seen me going from dancing with artists like Beyonce to being featured on billboards across the world. But to be honest, when I first started building my brand, I actually had no idea I was actually establishing one. I was just following my dreams and doing what I love and staying true to who I am. And I was sharing with the world my joy, which then became a platform and one of the main elements that I built my brand on. I will say that once I did discover that I was actually building a brand, I really began to hone in on three foundational pillars. Those pillars were accessibility, community, and impact. I think that we all have a brand, like you said, Andrew, whether we like it or not. And for me, my brand is me. I am much like, these actresses and comedians and public figures where I am the brand. I am, giving these different services and sharing my gifts and talents with the world. And it was all built upon my love of dance and movement at such a young age. I think that, it's very important that people really just get to the core of who they are and what they love, because that's going to be the driving force in building their brand.
Great point. And yeah, and when you define your brand as sort of you, it obviously helps because as you change, so does your brand. And how do you maintain it though? Because I think a lot of times people they feel like that is a very big undertaking to say, listen, I have social media, I have LinkedIn, I how do you sort of make it part of your life and also keep it on message?
Absolutely. I think that first things first, you need to know what your message is. And for me, my message incorporates those three key elements. The first one that I was talking about is joy. The other one is being well, wellness. And then the other one is inclusion. I allow each one to navigate my current journey, and I leave room for change over time as I grow. So it didn't look the same when I was a competition dancer as it did when I was a professional dancer, as it does now as a fitness professional, and a public speaker. I think that it's really, really important that as you start to shape your brand and the perception that you want others to have of you, that you hone in on some basic key elements. And so maybe get out a pen and a pad right now and write down, what are those three things that light you up inside? What are three things that empower you, or three things that, you can draw as a thread through like your story? So I think for me, those three key elements that I base my brand off of are something that are constant threads through everything that I do. Yes, dance and movement was the foundation that I laid everything on top of. But in order to continue to build, I really relied on those key elements to allow me to have a sense of who I am and never reach too far outside of that.
That's a great point. And we have some people, they're talking about sort of how they built their brand, and sort of finding support, which is, it's great to see that people have already been thinking about their personal brands. And, for those of you who have questions, make sure that you get them in. We already have questions coming in. So I just want to make sure that if you're sitting there and you have a question for Deja, make sure you're getting it in, because we're going to get to them in just a bit. But, when it comes to your career and you look at the transformation that you've made and the opportunities that you have, because you work with Lululemon, you have all these wonderful opportunities and all these different arms and different projects. How important would you say your personal brand has been to the success that you've had?
Oh, honestly, my personal brand has probably been the most important part of me getting these different opportunities and finding them and aligning with other brands. I think oftentimes when you think of yourself as a brand, it is hard to really understand that relationship of building with other brands. I think that one of the key components for me has been collaboration, and that's how I continue to grow my brand. Once I was very clear about what that was and what it was that I stood for, and really defining those key elements and figuring out what those foundational pillars were for me, I that really helped me to frame my past credentials in a way that would help me find future opportunities. So then I was able to lay the groundwork here. What have I done in the past that made me the best fit for what I'm doing in the present? For example, my dance career meant I already came with a level of professionalism needed to be on camera. I can captivate an audience and absorb new material pretty quickly. And I can also move my body in so many ways. And that is what shaped me into somewhat of a chameleon through dance. So then I was able to master different fitness modalities. And then I was able to, pick up on things very quickly, learn new skills very quickly, because I took those tools that I had from my last profession and applied it to my new profession. And that's also what I mean about that constant growth, leaving room for your vision and your brand to transform, because it will.
Yeah, and I think I see a lot of people where, in fact, they get really big into branding and they define their brand so narrowly, which
Yeah.
is fine for a time. But the problem is that as they evolve, their brand hasn't. And it ends up sort of becoming stale, and it almost sets them up for failure because it doesn't evolve with them. And they move away from what they were. And now it's sort of a confusing time for them.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very true. And what I come back to alignment with is, how does it feel to be me, right? That's what I want to get across to my audience. I think that's what my audience is interested in knowing. And when they buy into some of these other brands that I collaborate with, some that you mentioned, Lululemon and Mirror, they buy into me, and they're looking at me and how I do things. So I'm not in any way saying that I am an absolute expert on all things branding, but I have been able to build a substantial brand for myself. And I am definitely, in search of being able to give people the tools that I use to do so.
Yeah, no, and we really appreciate it. We have so many people joining us. Hi, Victoria from Dallas, Katie from Virginia, Julia from California, Rosa from Texas, Frederick from India. We have Frank from Maryland, Denise from New Jersey, and Marcello from Atlanta. So welcome to all of you. And Deja, my next question for you is, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently if you were just starting out your brand, or if you were just starting your brand today? What's sort of the step you would take?
Andrew, I think we hear it all the time, but being authentic and knowing who you are is really step one, right? You can't build something solid on a weak foundation. That goes for a home, that goes for your brand. Your superpower is really just being you, because there's no other you out there. There will never be another. There will never be somebody that can compare to exactly who you are and what you can bring to the table. So I also say to people, don't settle for being a carbon copy. Now, when I say that, I also say that it is important to be inspired by others. It is important to have mentorship and maybe get advice from people that you admire or people that continue to motivate you. But I think from that, you can mold and use all of those tools that you receive to be an original, to be the best version of yourself, and acknowledge that you bring something special to this world. I think that for me, like in building my brand, my constant affirmations are you are enough and what you have to offer is very valuable. So just show up as the best version of yourself today, and the universe will take care of the rest.
Such a good point. And I wanted to ask you too, because there are people who, you could be in all different walks of life and have a brand. You could be in customer service and your brand could be about dealing with customers, how to make them feel special, how to manage when you feel overwhelmed, something like that. But a lot of times people may not understand how to leverage their brand to get opportunities. They may just sort of wait for them to come to them. And that might be sort of what they which isn't a bad necessarily method, but, how would you suggest people leverage their brand to get opportunities?
Absolutely. I think that like you should first think about what it is that you do. For me, I danced my entire life, right? And so, I think thinking a little more narrow, I was like, okay, I can be a dancer, I can be a choreographer, I can be a creative director, but that kind of put me in a box. And so instead, I decided to take more of an unorthodox route, which everyone is welcome to. You don't have to stay in a box. It is a choice if you want to stay in that same profession. But I used my dance resume to make an athletic transition because I was already athletic and I knew that was something that I loved. I wanted to stay at the core of everything that I did. I knew that would naturally work for me. It was almost a seamless transition, and it was meant to be that I went from dance to fitness because it's also related to music and movement. And those are the two driving forces in my life. Now, alongside of those driving forces, I started to create these foundational pillars for myself on top of my athletic gifts and my ability to captivate an audience through, on camera work, on stage work. I knew that there were things that were important to me. And those three things for me were accessibility, community, and impact. I wanted to make sure that I was making what I was doing accessible to others, that I was reaching a very broad audience so that I could continue to reach the masses, that I could have this sort of global brand. And again, that's like not for everybody. It's the route that I took. That's what I wanted out of, what I was going to give to the world. I think the second thing was community. It was important to me that I was also looking at people that looked like me and making sure that those underserved communities were feeling included, that I have this ability to cultivate joy and to use that as my gift and also use that as the driving force in my brand. And I took that and I was like, okay, look, I can reach a broad community here. I can create a community here, which we'll talk a little bit about later. I have my own community called Sweaty Smile Squad. And all of you that are here today are welcome to join it. But I thought about, community and the benefit for others, the importance of health equity. And, then that drove into that philanthropy piece for me where I was able to give back. And then the other side of that was impact. What kind of impact did I want to have? Did I really want to sell products? Did I want to sell my services? Or did I want to look at people outside of just being consumers? That was my answer. And look at people as people and not numbers. And so then that's where my impact came, to really push this message across that people deserve to live a healthy and happy life. And then again, that pillar was something that I stood on. So those three things: accessibility, community, impact. I always come back to those three things. And I think that, being able to have that first in my bubble of dance and then expand upon that is really how I created that leverage to get to new heights and get other opportunities.
That's great. And actually, speaking of your community, we have a comment here from Stephanie who says, Deja's workouts on the mirror are so inspiring, a great sweat. I love being part of the Sweaty Smile Squad.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
And speaking of community, I do want to get to all the questions that we've gotten in. We have so many. But before we get to those, I just want to ask too, is that I think a lot of times people, they get overwhelmed with all the social media that are out there. Because obviously you have the brand that's sort of word of mouth, where people are like, oh, Deja, she's amazing. She's always so bubbly. She's so authentic. But then you might have like, Twitter, you have Instagram, TikTok. We're on LinkedIn right now. So how do you sort of figure out what to put your efforts into? Because I think sometimes people can get overwhelmed. How do you approach that?
Really, my honest answer, Andrew, around posting is I struggle with this myself. Some of you may have seen my Instagram post from yesterday on my personal page where I shared words by an artist named Kevin Cult. And it was around substance in posting and hopping on the viral train, and how some of our authenticity gets diluted from spreading ourselves too thin. And so, this is something in the past where I was like, okay, I've got to be on every social media platform and try to reach as many people as I can. And to be honest with you, it really sent me down that lane of kind of becoming like this carbon copy and not being, as original as I could possibly be. So now, for me, as I begin to like reevaluate that process, it's important not to lose myself in constructing this perception of self for others. Whatever I do, I want to remain authentic. I want to, show people who I truly am. And though we all feel the pressures of posting on all platforms at all times, it's now about recognizing where your audience is, i.e., my Sweaty Smile Squad. And I'm learning where it's necessary to place my energy and where I can preserve it.
Great point. And actually, we have another comment here. I can't see their name, but if you're not part of the Sweaty Smile Squad, you are missing out. Deja is the most inspiring leader. So you have big fans in our comments. And
So sweet. Thank you.
I want to make sure we get to our questions. And we have a great one here from Monica. And she says, as a sales professional, I struggle to figure out what those foundational pillars look like. I'd love to get some tips on where to begin.
Absolutely. So, Monica, I would say that first and foremost, you've already stated what you do, right? But what do you love? What are the things that light you up? Maybe they are things within your career. Maybe they're things outside of your career. I think that the first initial step is really discovering those things that you love. I always come back to doing things that I love, because if I'm not passionate about it, I won't be consistent with it, right? So I think that, maybe not all the things in your job are all the things that you like, that light you up. There are things that are within all of our jobs that, are not the most fun. They're not the most enjoyable, but we have to do them as a completion of, the process and a completion of the full package, what we deliver. But I think that it's really, really important to always come back to those things that you love and let those be your driving force. So I would suggest, as you're creating these foundational pillars for yourself, as you're creating those, I want you to come back to that thing of like, okay, what do I love? Are there 2 things that I love? Maybe 3 things, maybe just 1 thing that I love. And you can start there and then begin to build upon that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And actually, we have a question here from Dolores too about sort of interest and joys. And Dolores wants to know, what if you have a wide range of interests? Do you include them all in your brand or not?
Ooh, that's really good, Dolores. I honestly think that you can include as much as you have an appetite for, but I don't think that you have to conquer it all at once, right? So for me, I think, I very clearly started out with the art of movement and music. And it was very clear that that was what it was, right? And as I began to grow my brand, I started adding in new elements. So I think it's great to like brainstorm, get it all out on paper, but then really hone in on what those main pieces are for you. And I think that, alongside of listing out all of those things, you're going to discover that some of those things belong in the same bucket, right? And so then you can narrow it down as to like, what's the headline of that pillar, or what's the headline of that key element, whatever that is. So yeah, I think that, it is okay to have a ton of gifts and talents. It's okay to have a ton of things that you love, but I think that, making it digestible and really honing in on the most important pieces first is going to, set you up for success.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And in fact, I know some people who, their career is basically to be an influencer. And a lot of times when I talk to them, they sort of set aside things that they don't want to share, that they'll sort of say, this is for me. And I always find that really interesting, that it's like, oh, I have these things that I do share with people, but I do have these other things that they're just for me. They're my little thing. And I think that's always so refreshing to see people say, like, yes, I am very public and I do share a lot about myself, but I also just have my little closed off area here that is just for me. And I always like that.
Yeah, Andrew. And I think that that's a good process of elimination too. Oftentimes we don't know where to start, but we know where we don't want to start, right? So maybe, your process is working your way back and starting off with those things that are sacred to you, those things that are special to you, those things that are only for you, and putting those aside. So now you know what you don't want to share, and then it'll bring you closer to what you do want to share.
Yeah, great points. And Nicole has a question here. Does your personal brand have to match your professional brand? And I guess, for you, your professional brand is your personal brand, really.
Yeah, for me, it is true that my personal and professional brand do collide, are cohesive, are almost one and the same. But I don't believe that that's true for everybody. Even as a fitness professional, I, subscribe to the notion that fitness isn't a one size fits all format. Wellness is not a one size fits all format. I think that it is different for everybody. And so your journey is going to look different than mine, different than Andrew's, different than your friends or your families. And that's what makes your journey unique. I think leaning into that is really going to give people a different perspective of something that they haven't seen before. And truthfully, those are the brands that stand out to me. And I'm sure the ones that stand out to you if you listed your favorite brands.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. And, we have a really good question here from Jean, who wants to know, what are your daily habits to keep up your momentum? And you obviously have so much energy, but like you said, you sometimes struggle to figure out, okay, where do I post and things like that. So do you have a regimen that you follow, or what's your advice?
I do. I honestly have this thing early in the morning that I call my Deja Dailies, and it's how I set the tone for my day. So just like I stepped into this space and I kind of set the tone for this conversation, I do that same thing for myself because I know I have to pour into myself before I can pour energy out into the world. I think that you discovering what your routine is going to be, whether it's a morning routine or something that you do in the afternoon or something that you do just before bed, this regimen and this repetition that you get yourself into the groove of is also matching the consistency that you're going to have as you're driving your brand forward. If you would like to know, some of my Deja Dailies include meditation. I find a sense of stillness and calm because my life is constantly on the move. I am constantly, pushing out energy into the world, cultivating joy everywhere that I go. And so I have to find the joy within first. So I like to slow down, have a little bit of time to meditate. I love, love, love to read. A lot of my inspiration and motivation comes from some of the books that I read, some of the authors that I enjoy. And then I just love some pleasure reading. It's a way to take my mind off of everything that is going on in the world. And really, honestly, like some of the daily chaos that I may face as a content creator, as a fitness professional, as a person of influence. I think also it's important for me to have that moment where I just get to move for me. So I do my workouts in the morning, or I will find time to just put on music and dance around my room, dance with my husband and my dog, and then just getting out into nature. I think that is a huge part of how I find a sense of calm and how I really get inspired by the world around me. So that's just a little bit of a part of my morning routine. And, I give myself grace. Not every day does that routine look perfect. And not every step of the way will my brand look perfect. And so, kind of creating that mirroring effect of like what's going on in my real life as opposed to what everyone sees or perceives is going on in my life. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really fantastic advice. And then I think this is a great question to end on, is from Denise. And they want to know, what's your advice for finding what makes you unique, especially when you're early in your career?
Oh, that's really good, Denise. Thank you for that question. I was very fortunate that I knew at a very early age that I had this ability to make people smile and people feel good on the inside. And that then translated to me helping people look good on the outside. But I think that, pay attention to the things that you get noticed for. Pay attention to the things that your friends love about you, your family loves about you. Even ask them. I think that, that has been something that's huge in my research in building my brand and creating my brand is like, I ask the people around me what it is that they enjoy about my workouts, what it is that they enjoy about, some of my posts or some of the things that I share with people. And I listen to what resonates. And then I took that and I was like, okay, I can build off of this. I can continue to create this, to, transform within these, not necessarily boundaries, but within these borders, right? And so I think in discovering what those are, you've got to listen to your audience. And maybe your audience starts out with friends and family or your peers, and then grows into a greater audience of people all across the globe, like mine has.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was muted. But no, your
Okay.
audience definitely showed up today. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think they're convincing each other in the comments to get Mirror. And I think maybe I want to
Yes.
become part of the Sweaty Smile Squad too.
Oh, Andrew, I would love to have you. You are welcome into the Sweaty Smile Squad.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and hopefully everyone's following. We've been showing your LinkedIn URL at the bottom of the screen, but where else can people find you?
So people can find me on DejaRiley.com, all things Deja Riley. I am on TikTok, I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. You can follow my personal page at Deja Riley on all platforms, except for TikTok, which is Deja and Jimmy Izzy, because my husband is really the star of that show. You'll see a ton of our dance videos there. But everything else is either at Deja Riley, and then my community is at Sweaty Smile Squad. And like I said, I am inviting all of you, extending a warm welcome to all of you to join the squad. You don't need anything to join the squad. You just have to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. One of my favorite quotes by Arthur Ashe.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Deja. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I know so many people got so much help from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. I know you got so much out of today. And don't worry, if you missed any part of this conversation, you could hit refresh on your browser and it'll be here. Or if you want to come back later, it'll still be here. And, if you want to start building your brand, one of the best ways is to start posting content. And what better way to do that than share this video and share whatever piece of advice really resonated with you from Deja. So make sure you do that with your LinkedIn profile. And then, of course, we will be off next week because in the US, there is a Labor Day holiday. However, there's always great programming on the LinkedIn news page. And in fact, on Monday, my colleague Nina Melendez will be talking about embracing uncertainty, both in and outside the workplace. She'll be talking to Nathan and Susanna Furr about their science-based guide for navigating the unknown. Again, that's Monday, August 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time from the LinkedIn news page. And obviously, we'll be back in just a couple of weeks. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember to take care of yourself. You can only be a good candidate. You can only get hired. You can only get ahead in your career if you're safe and well enough to do so. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. And until next time, stay well and best of luck.